Hello, hi, how are you? And welcome to another podcast by George. Well, we're back on the campus of Drake University, just down the street from Lefty's, one of the great venues in the Des Moines area, one of the live music venues still remaining that plays all types of music. And tonight, we're hosting the Haymakers. They're in town. We've got Dustin Arbuckle and Tom Page.
Hello.
The two principals from, singer-songwriters from the Haymakers. Do you write all the stuff for the Haymakers? The two of you?
Well, I pretty much. I mean, as far as the original material, there are certainly some contributions from the other guys in the band, but we do the bulk of the songwriting. Yeah.
And we're egalitarian about it, so if somebody has got some suggestion, we put everybody's name on it, and then we divvy up the money later.
Yeah.
We're still waiting on the check.
Whenever that comes in, yeah.
Yeah.
See how that happens.
Well, the Wichita connection is interesting. I mean, you don't think of Wichita as a music capital, certainly, but I don't want to say that in a negative way because a lot of people talk the same way about Des Moines. There's a lot of good music and a lot of good talent in communities across America. My knowledge of Wichita, really, believe it or not, oddly enough, is hockey, because I'm a hockey guy. The
Thunder.
The Thunder down there in Wichita, and Topeka's got the Scarecrows, but I know that you guys have got, you got hockey down there in Wichita. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Haymakers, because some people
and I'm sorry, and I should stop you. It is actually just Haymakers.
Okay.
The is not part of the equation.
Oh, okay. So if you Google it, search it, just plain Haymakers. Yeah, and I think I've done that on Amazon. I made that. Okay, thanks for the clarification. That's good.
Oh, we have to do that a lot, because people just assume there's a the in front of it, but it's just Haymakers. We very deliberately did that.
Yes, which most of our deliberate decisions have, resulted in a certain amount of grief later.
Haymakers. So coming out of Wichita, and Americana music. Okay, so I never know what that means exactly. It's the music of America. I get that. Country, bluegrass. I think Appalachia or something. I don't think Wichita. I mean, there's not too many mountains, no hillbillies in Wichita. So how does this influence come out of Wichita, Kansas?
Well, to me, I think Americana music or roots music, if you will, it's just an extremely broad term. It does seem as though people kind of wish to equate Americana with more like country and bluegrass sorts of styles. But to me, I think it includes those things, and it includes traditional blues, and it includes, honky-tonk country, and, all sorts of American traditional music, and even up into more modern forms like roots rock and things like that.
Some kinds of jazz.
Absolutely.
I think fit definitely, or maybe all jazz, but some of them are more Americana than others. I don't know. You
can even make the case that early rock and roll and even some kind of soul and R&B stuff fits. I mean, I think it's a really broad tent, or term, big tent, broad term, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
I think why we go for it, in fact, is because of that width. Any of these other things could really have some very strict connotation attached to them. Like you say, when you think of bluegrass, you think of a certain type of mountain music.
And we are not a bluegrass
We're
band.
Not from the mountains. Yeah. We don't have a banjo.
But you got mandolins.
We do, exactly.
We have two of them.
We do have
Sometimes.
mandolins. We do have upright bass. We do sing together. Yeah. I mean, there are certain corollaries, right? And a lot of times I'll say to people it's a Western-style string band. And some people that rings some bell with, and others don't really know what that means. But, everybody wants you to really put yourself in an extremely narrow box for them. And so one way of sort of resisting that and saying it's good music that is based on the American tradition is to say we belong in this Americana category.
The common connection that we have here out of the Des Moines area, and they've been guests on my podcast, Bob Pace.
I know
and
Bob.
Matt Woods.
And I know Matt.
Yeah, friends of yours. And you come very highly recommended by both of those guys. And Bob in particular is very impressed with the harmonica. I first came across you and your harmonica playing with the M&A, with Moreland and Arbuckle here at the Blues Society, that thing that they put on here 5 years ago, the hotel downtown. Everybody said, you got to go see the guy playing the cigar box. I said, what the hell is that, Well, okay, so here's this window rattling, underwear shaking music of Moreland and Arbuckle, and you guys did that for a number of years, and it's like this side is ZZ Top. I mean, maybe the better side is ZZ Top. I mean, that's
kind of you.
Oh my God, that stuff was good. And then it
Boogie,
changes.
that's a fair analogy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think we did the M&A thing for a long time, and we made a lot of great music. I'm still very proud of the music that we made in that band, and we, just reached a point where it was time to go our separate ways, and Aaron was ready to be off the road and had kind of just lost interest in playing music.
Oh, really?
For a living.
Oh.
And doing the road thing, and kind of I think stylistically had gotten to the point where he really wanted to go in a much different direction, and I still very much did want to continue touring and playing music be the kind of the center of my professional world and just the kind of, I wouldn't say the center of my life because I've got a wife and a son and my family is very important to me, but I mean this is when I was 17 years old what I decided I wanted to do for a living. It's how I decided I wanted to make my life, and we just kind of couldn't find a way to look at it and say, okay, this is a way to go forward that works for both of us and to keep this band going in a way that works for both of us. And so it just made more sense to go our separate ways. But it's been great for me from the perspective of, Tom and I have been doing Haymakers together for 7 years.
At 2012, I saw
7.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah,
and then our duet before that.
Yeah, we did kind of duo gigs around Wichita and Kansas for probably about 7 or 8 years before that, and then started Haymakers in 2012 when we just kind of felt like we'd hit a wall.
Yeah, I think similar to what you were just explaining about the M&A situation. I mean, you kind of got to a place where we needed to either do something different or quit doing it.
Yeah.
And so we thought, well, we can integrate what we've already learned if we were to expand in this string band way. And then, of course, we're in Wichita, so it's like, you hold auditions and 100 bass players show up and pick the best and move on,
No, we called friends.
It's not quite that way. But
our friend Mark Foley, who's the professor of upright bass at Wichita State, also happens to be the principal bassist in the Wichita Symphony, and
I wondered if that was a nickname. He really is a doctor.
He really is a
PhD,
doctor,
yeah.
and PhD of bass. Which, sometimes it's like a medical doctor or a doctor of anthropology that happens to be a hot picker. But no, this guy is a PhD of bassology.
Nice.
Yeah. And our old friend Ted Farha, who's a mandolin player and has been kind of around the bluegrass folk scene in Wichita for a long time, and just started jamming, and it was a lot of fun, and it worked. And as the time has gone on, for the first several years the band was together, we did mostly just kind of gig around the Wichita area when I wasn't, because I was very, very busy with M&A. And the other guys, Mark has a lot of obligations with the university and with the symphony. Ted runs a construction company. Tom is president of the Kansas chapter of National Federation of the Blind.
Yeah, and other bands and so on.
Yeah.
So when we were all keeping busy at it, but because of the changes in Dustin's life, we had the opportunity basically to take it forward.
Which has kind of led to some more kind of evolution in the lineup. Our friend Dennis Harden joined the band full-time 2 or 3 years ago, and when we have our full 5-piece lineup, he plays octave mandolin, which is a bigger-bodied, lower-voiced version of the instrument. And when Mark can't tour with us, which is a lot because of his obligations, we have a guy named Caleb Drummond, who is also a guy with a music degree and an outstanding upright bass player.
You guys are highly educated.
Outstanding.
Well,
the bass players sure
those
are.
guys are. Yeah, I was going to say
They
the
make
bass
us
players.
sound great.
Yeah. That's great.
I think Dennis has a degree in electrical engineering.
Yeah.
I'm a 2-time winner from WSU myself, an unrelated field, but there is something to be said for it's all expression and power of mind one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, and we'll move off of the M&A thing, but I always encourage people. I talk to some of my friends my age, and nobody makes great rock music anymore. I tell them,
disagree.
Look up Tall Boogie. I mean, I love that song. I mean, I'm a short guy, and I just love. I mean, when I'm feeling short, I go on YouTube and watch Tall Boogie. Honest to God, I love that song. I mean, that's great. Yeah,
and that song was it's a good microcosm of what we were as a band. The really strong Mississippi blues influence, but also melded with that heavier kind of stoner rock,
Yeah.
sound that, and the incorporation of the cigar box, which, people kind of identified us with, but I think was not necessarily as big a part of our sound as it was maybe like 6-8 songs a night, but it was unique, and the way Aaron played it.
It's showy, and certainly though that did, it was very, appropriate for his slide style.
Absolutely.
Cool song. And are you singing through a harmonica mic on that song, or it's got a little filter on the voice, as I recall?
Well, I think in the studio,
it's an effect.
The engineer just used an effect, but sometimes live I would sing through. That was what we were going
do
for.
Partial,
partial.
That's what it sounds like.
It's a fun effect to be able to use.
It's a great video, too. I tell people, check that out. There's a band called Vintage Trouble, I think, that used to... Oh, my God, were those guys good. Yeah, and are you familiar with a band out of Iceland called Kaleo? Yeah, check them out. A bunch of young guys. And the beauty of that band is they're from Iceland, and they're looking at us. And like the Brits did way back in the 60s, they're like, you guys, this is your good stuff. We're going to take it.
Yeah.
And we're going to, that's what we're going to do. We could take anything, but the fact that they've taken the stuff that they're taking, oh man, it tells you this is a really good stuff.
How do you spell that?
Kaleo. And they're young, and those guys, they've got it going on, and they're out of Iceland of all things. And they've got some cool videos too. Like they go out, they got helicoptered onto an iceberg, and they play on it. I mean, it's some cool stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So Haymakers, all acoustic. Damnations, all electric.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's kind of the thing. I think when M&A broke up, I really wanted to go in more of a just cross-genre roots music direction. And M&A, we had, a lot of different influences, but I think there was a lot of things that because of our instrumentation, it was a lot harder for us to do. And there were a lot of things that I'd wanted to do that I hadn't been able to do for a long time, or I had never really been able to get into as much. And so, I think that's the thing with both Haymakers and the Damnations. They really are bands that represent, I feel like, a pretty big cross-section of American roots music. And with, Haymakers certainly do cheat a little more toward the maybe kind of country Appalachia bluegrass side of things, but we also play blues and jazz and this sort of maybe kind of what you'd call alt country or whatever, and maybe the Damnations cheat a little more in the direction of like some soul and stuff like that that's a little different. But I mean the whole point with both of these bands is that they're bands that are capable of doing a lot of different things, and it's a lot of fun because it definitely for us keeps it fun and interesting, and we don't feel like we have to be pigeonholed in anything. Like Tom was saying, like people want to put us, Haymakers especially, want to be put in this narrow box of like, oh, you guys are a bluegrass band. We are not a bluegrass band. We play some bluegrass songs.
We don't have an axe to grind with bluegrass.
No, we love bluegrass. But a lot of bluegrass purists would look at us and be like, you guys are not
exactly. If we started representing ourselves as a bluegrass band, we'd likely to get beat up some. Yeah. And we would not be accepted in the mountains very well. It would be trouble,
But we have instruments that can play some of those. I mean, obviously guitar, mandolin, upright bass are traditional bluegrass instruments. But with us, I think when we want to cheat that direction and do more bluegrass style material, the octave mandolin kind of ends up filling the role of the banjo. It's got a similar tonality, and the harmonica ends up kind of filling the role of the fiddle or maybe the dobro, because I can have those sort of slidey long notes and things like that. So, but again, that instrumentation also allows us to maybe do some kind of bluesy stuff and jazzy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, not the bluegrass.
Every once in a while we get to put it all together and have a kind of either a 6 or 7 piece kind of lineup of the whole acoustic electric combo.
Yeah, the Haynations.
And we haven't got to do that much, but hey, anybody who wants to sponsor an event, just get a hold of us. We're available.
I would, if somebody wants to put up the money, I'd be happy as hell to just tour with the whole damn works. It's a lot of good dudes, and it's a lot of fun.
That dovetails nicely. Let's talk about a Hay Nation song then. Spent the Rent.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it in both groups. And again, that is proof positive that you're not a bluegrass band, because that's not a bluegrass song.
And okay, let me say, I think in the Haymakers, it really comes off like a Western swing kind of feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, if you're much of a student of blues music, the West Coast swing blues also has that sort of feel. So when you hear the Damnations do it with drums, electric instruments, it comes off that way.
It's really just based around the difference in instrumentation.
But so really, if we boil this down in the American thing, I think what we're talking about is a swing tune.
Yeah.
That's really the basis of it, and you can mix it up any way you wanted. We don't really dramatize it in either band to the extent that there's like a bum 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 bum. But it could be done that way if somebody so chose.
Yeah. Well, we're going to sample that. I'm going to play a little bit of it here in the podcast. I want folks to listen to it. Now, this is going to be the Damnations version.
Okay.
That's just on the newly released EP.
Yes.
That just came out. So listen to this. We'll come right back.
I spent the rent on women, wine, and song. I spent the rent, every greenback dollar gone. Begging to my landlord, let me slide a week or so. Catch me before next Friday night, and I swear I'll have the dough. And I spent the rent just a shouting and carousing around the town with my dear old friends, you see. Late night at the beer store, that fun don't come for free. I have spent up all my bread, and Monday's coming down on me.
All right, so we're back. That's a good cross-sampling of the song as it's done by the Damnations. A little different when the Haymakers, when Haymakers do it. Yeah, I'll catch on to this eventually.
We have had one MC who was able to come up and say, the Haymaker. It's possible. It's possible.
Haymakers.
Yeah.
But the Haymakers do it. So tell us about the writing of that song. How did it come together?
At the time when we started writing that song, I was roommates with a friend of ours named Michael Carmody, who's also a guy who Tom had been in bands with, rock bands with way
Wichita
back.
musical and entrepreneurial figure.
And we were talking about, I don't even remember what brought it up, but he was saying, yeah, I've had this idea for a song, like a Western swing thing for a long time. And as soon as Michael mentioned that, for some reason the synapses just started firing. And ideas started coming to my mind, and I was like, man, do you mind if I do something with it? He's like, yeah, man, just give me 5%. And so,
we might have started at 10, but hey, he's still waiting on the check too.
And so, it felt like a tune that would work. Like, just in my mind, it felt like a tune that would work well for Tom and I to put together, and that was shortly before the earliest Haymakers jams started happening. And so, I brought the idea to Tom, and we started working on the tune, and I had some lyrical ideas, and he brought in some lyrical ideas, and
we mixed and matched and word played and
and
storyboarded, so to speak.
And then when we started jamming with Mark and Ted, like, Mark had some additional ideas for different ways to arrange it and everything, and then that's just how it came together. It was really the first Haymakers original song.
So we're talking early Haymakers.
Yep, I think Ted said, no, it has to have that chord. And we were like, okay, all right, fine, because we're going to cut it. And so he gets some credit for helping the thing evolve to where...
I love to hear that, because I'm really interested in that. I've written a little bit, and I love the wordplay stuff. I like the way things come together. That's cool. The other Haymakers song that I wanted to talk about, maybe play a little bit about, that I was really smitten with, is Moonlight on the Mountain So High. Now, is that some traditional arrangement in there? Where did that come from? You know what I think of when I hear that? Tom Dooley.
Oh,
because it's a wanted man, and
and I think I had the idea for that song, and this again another old song that took
we played it for a few years.
We played it for a few years before Haymakers even got together, but I I was on like an all-night drive home from an M&A tour, like a long, long drive, like we had finished in Oregon and we were on our way home. And it was like middle of the night and I was driving down I-15 in Utah. And
you're pretty much alone.
Yeah, like the other guys were passed out.
You can go fast.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was caffeined out of my mind trying to make this all-night drive. And to my left, I could see the big snow-capped mountains, the Wasatch Range, and it was really brightly moonlit night. And just that line, there's moonlight on the mountain so high, started going through my mind. And I think, again, this is when Tom and I had not been playing together for too terribly long, maybe a couple of years. And I was starting to really dig more into Appalachian music and bluegrass and things like that. And it immediately gave me this feeling of like an Appalachian, like a mountain blues, like something like in the kind of in the vibe of like someone like Doc Boggs, who was an early, like sort of kind of an Appalachian blues banjo guy who recorded some stuff in the late 20s and then was rediscovered in the in the folk revival of the late 50s and early 60s. And so that was just kind of where my mind with it. And same thing, it's just like it felt like a tune that, because of that, is that Tom and I could probably really sink our teeth into. And it's the same thing. We got together and just, Tom kind of felt where I was going with it. I had the vocals and the melody were already there, and he just kind of
right. So I did mostly what you might call like production arrangement, where it's like, well, okay, this is the melody you're singing. It dictates that these chords have to go with it. Yeah. And
find
what's
the right
a good
feel
key for Dustin. Maybe a couple words to change or something. I don't remember much,
But then when we, again, as with some of these other songs, like when we started playing it with a band, it evolved. And with, Mark brought in, it became so bass driven because Mark's instinct on that bass line with a boom, 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 gave it more of this like kind of,
it's eerie
blues and jazz vibe.
It's kind of I hear the Moonlight thing. I mean, it's like being afraid of the dark almost. It's about a wanted man. It's a kind of
a wrongfully accused man, by the way.
Yeah, let's listen to a little bit of that. I want folks to hear it and listen for that bass line that he's talking about. And listen, tell me this doesn't sound like something at night. I mean, it's a cool night sound. Here we go.
Moonlight on the mountain so high. Moonlight on the mountain so high. I'm running for my life tonight, and all that's left to guide my sight is moonlight on the mountain so high. I'm wanted in the valley down below. I'm wanted in the valley down below. They want to hang me on the morn for a murder I did not perform. I'm running from the valley down below. There's moonlight on the mountain so high. Moonlight on the mountain so high. I'm running for my life tonight, and all that's left to guide my sight is moonlight on the mountain so high.
All right, so before we go much further, we got to talk about the harmonica. Because I mean, this is Dustin Arbuckle. I mean, this is now you're doing something different with the harmonica. I mean, you're really stretching the boundaries of the instrument. I think you've got something that other folks don't have.
Well, I that's extremely kind of you, and I really appreciate that. I think I just just incorporating my influences into it in a way that I guess comes off as unique. I have people tell me that a lot. Personally, I think there are a lot of harmonica players in the world who do all sorts of things with the instrument that I can't even dream of. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Charlie Musselwhite, and I'm a huge fan of people like Kim Wilson, and as far as modern harmonica players, guys like that are great. And there are a lot of other great younger harmonica players. My friend Brandon Santini is outstanding, and my friend Steve Mariner up in Canada is killer, and tons of others that I can't even think to mention right now. But I mean, I think for me, I mean, I've got a lot of influence from traditional blues harmonica. Guys like Sonny Boy Williamson, number 2, and Little Walter, Big Walter Horton, Sonny Terry. All those guys were really big influences on me when I first started playing. And then Lee McBee, who was a great singer and harmonica player from the Kansas City area. I met Lee when I was about 19, and I got to hear him at a club in Wichita. And that was, I don't know, I mean, I'd seen other great harmonica players prior to that. Even just some of the guys we have in our own town, I mean,
Bill Garrison.
Bill Garrison,
obviously there's some connection to the style there.
And David Graham,
David Graham creeps in there.
Local guys around Wichita that, were really, really helpful to me and really, really helped, encourage me with the instrument. But when I saw Lee, something kind of clicked, and I don't know what was so inspiring about his playing. But it really, it did. Like, I think prior to that, maybe I viewed myself more as a singer who played some harmonica, who played harmonica. I think maybe I viewed the harmonica as a more secondary thing. And when I first heard Lee, like, I got a CD from him that night, and I don't think it left the CD player in my truck for 2 weeks or something. And it was one of the most profoundly influential musical experiences in my life. And, I mean, I feel like Lee, again, not a guy that a lot of people necessarily talk about as like one of the great harmonica players of his generation, but, he had a unique style. He was really heavily influenced by like George Harmonica Smith, but also nobody else sounded like him. And his playing really influenced me, and I think if you hear Lee and then you hear me, I won't seem quite so unique.
You're very modest. Here's what I think. When I hear you play, I think to myself, I used to think the harmonica was a simple instrument.
A lot of people do.
It's not so simple.
No.
I mean, and you've gone out there to the boundaries a little bit. Are you still trying to learn? Are you still experimenting? Or are you kind of just working where you're at?
Hey, all the time learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and again, that's a big thing about like, having. We talk about these different points in our musical evolution, and I think for me, the evolution of like Tom and I's musical evolution together, has definitely influenced my playing by, I've incorporating my style into more of a string band thing without being a person who's really studied like the traditional like old-timey straight harp style quite as much. Although lately I've been trying to learn that more and incorporate
applying
it
to some fiddle tunes and stuff that require it.
Yeah, but I mean, and again, I'm certainly not the first guy to do this. There's plenty of others who have, but I mean, I think that's been a big thing, and with M&A, I definitely pushed in a certain direction. But now with the Damnations, I'm definitely exploring more kind of like jazz vibes and things like that, and I don't know. I mean, people say I don't feel like I'm pushing the boundaries of anything. I just feel like I'm playing the instrument in the way that makes sense to me, I guess, and that works for me.
To come back to where you said, are you a singer that plays a little harp, or are you a guy who plays harmonica and is a singer or whatever? What is this balance, right?
Yeah.
I think something that stood out from when I first met you, which reminds me of Lee McBee or a Kim Wilson or a Sam Myers, is when you come to the mic with the harmonica, it's not as though you're like just adding a little texture or floating on the band, it is a lead instrument. And you're hitting it like, bam, here I am, this is it. And then, when it's done, it's done, so to speak. Not to say you can't use it as a textural thing, but I think a lot of people maybe don't have that presence to really just flip the switch on when it's on time.
I think that part of being a good player is understanding the moment and when you're supposed to maybe be a little more textural, and when you're, like we were talking about this song earlier. We've been playing this old kind of country ballad, which I really think is more of a soul or R&B tune, called "A Good Woman's Love," that Dennis has been singing in Haymakers lately. And I approach that song very much as like, it's my job to be like a horn section. Not necessarily be playing a lot of like improvisational lead lines, but just add that texture. Yeah. But
I think I'm the fake string section in that song, so totally, that's exactly how it boils down, right? And we have rhythm, and they're singing, and so like, well, you're standing there with your instrument, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. But in other songs, I feel like it is very much my role to be the thing that's out front. And
well, exactly, like you come on with the saxophone, nobody wants to hear it kind of in the background. Yeah, it's like it's time to show me the Charlie Parker, right?
Yeah. So,
well, and I love the recording. So many of the musicians now are, if they're not self-produced, they're heavily involved in the production of the albums that they're coming out with. Your vocals are like a ring in a bell. I mean, they're on top. They're mixed so that I can understand every word that you say, and the lyrics are important in songs, and I've always get kind of frustrated, even with M&A, when you had the big sound, the big electric, big guitar sound. I mean, I could understand, because of the way that I guess it was produced, the way you sang, what you were saying, what the lyrics were, and it's still true today.
Partially diction, I'm sure, but also, like you're saying, process. Yeah. And that's a hard thing in the recording process to get that just right. And certainly, I know on Haymakers, we've spent some time remixing, basically, to say, okay, it's too loud. No, but it's got to be this loud. So what,
Yeah.
I don't. It's interesting that you bring that up, because you're not the first person who said that to me recently. I struggle to remember who else it's been, but that's come up a couple of times. Is people say that they like that they can understand the lyrics when I sing, which I think maybe that comes from the fact that lyrics are pretty important to me. Like, I've always been a person who listens.
Right.
I listen very closely to the lyrics of songs.
Me too.
And I think that's. Again, we all have a hard time understanding people who think differently from us in certain ways, and we need to strive to get out of our own thought box, I guess. But I've always had a hard time understanding it when people say, "Oh, I don't really listen to words." It's like, then you're missing the point of the song. Right. Well, not all songs. Some songs it really is just about the groove. I mean, there's a lot of
But I've always found if I had a tendency to want to mumble words in a song, it probably either means I shouldn't be singing it, or I need different words. Like rewrite this one, because like whenever you get to that part, obviously you're not believing it if you're not delivering it.
Yeah.
Maybe some of it too is a Midwestern thing. I mean, being from Kansas, we're right in the middle of everything, and I think, I don't know. I mean, it's. Maybe I have kind of like natural non-regional diction or something. So, I mean, I don't, there is a little.
You've had to learn to speak slowly and carefully so someone not from Kansas can understand you.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a little natural drawl, but not a lot. Because my family's from southeast Kansas, which is very rural.
Southern Iowa, and people start having a little bit of it. You can tell. Yeah, it doesn't take very far to get down.
Southern Iowa is really close to northern Missouri.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. And they talk quite southern down. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but at the same time, it is kind of that flat accent.
It is.
So, whatever.
Well, I can pick it out, and I appreciate that, and I like the lyrics. I've got a little bit of a theory. I don't know if there's anything to it, but I've always thought that some record companies like to mix those vocals down and bring that music up, so it almost forces you to re-listen and re-listen and re-listen to a song to figure out what the hell it is they're talking about.
I thought it was to make you turn up the volume, but I'm with you.
Yeah, that could be it too, to try to pick it out of there. I don't know, but that's not the case with the Haymakers. So before we get out of here, and we're about out of time, I did want to talk a little bit about that Damnations EP, because it's new. I've got it, and check it out. It's on Amazon. There's like 6 songs on it. There's 5 or 6 songs. Great. The song "Stop."
Yeah.
Is that an original?
Nope.
That thing sounds like Stax, it's driving me crazy. Oh,
Yep,
man, that's a great song, yeah.
Jerry Ragavoy and a guy named Mort Schumann, who I'm not as familiar with, but
I wondered who Mort Schumann was myself. I looked it up.
Some cubicle guy, writing cubicle guy. But Jerry Ragavoy, who is a great soul songwriter and producer, wrote that tune, and it was first kind of, I think, like a moderate hit for a guy named Howard Tate in 1967, and then became much more famous when Hendrix and Buddy Miles did it with the Band of Gypsy.
Oh, they did, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
But to me, that tune has always been like one of these great unsung soul classics that you just don't hear that much, but it's a great song.
God, your vocal on that is great. I mean, you've got that R&B soul sound in your voice. I mean, it's amazing to me to hear a guy that did the Moreland and Arbuckle, that screaming blues rock stuff, and then come out and sound like that. That's phenomenal.
Well,
really.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. And that's one of those sounds that, because of our instrumentation in M&A, we weren't able to tackle as much. And that was one of the first songs that we learned with the Damnations.
It's hard to have the R&B feel with no bass.
Yeah.
Right.
It really is difficult.
Yeah, your voice sounds like remember the lead singer, the drummer for Rare Earth?
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like that guy.
Thanks.
I mean, that's a high compliment. I mean,
Yeah,
that dude
no,
could
thank
sing.
you.
I can't even think of his name now, but holy cow, that guy was good.
Yeah. He was. Thank you. That is a great compliment.
So that's the lead-off tune on the EP. Before we get out, I got to talk about. I'm from a truck driving family.
Oh, 6
my
days.
dad was a truck. Yeah, 6 days on the road. My God, when I was a kid, that is like the truck
Way.
drivers. Yeah, I'm one of the few guys you'll ever talk to that knows what a Georgia overdrive is. Huh? You guys know?
No.
I thought it was a add-on overdrive gear, basically.
Well, what it actually is, and this is back in the day, nobody's got it anymore. It's the mountains of Georgia. Put your truck in neutral. No engine braking. You're freewheeling. Yeah. And the hell of it is, back in Georgia, a lot of these guys are loggers up in those mountains, so they're those big old log trucks, Yeah, that's a Georgia overdrive.
That's great.
Yeah, I know all that truck driving stuff. Yeah, you know what?
I grew up loving the Dave Dudley version.
Oh my God, what a great voice! Yeah.
And I learned that song from the Taj Mahal record, Giant Steps, because when I was 15, and I was first starting to get into blues, I asked my dad, could you get me some blues CDs for Christmas? Because he was really into the style. And what he got me was, it was Best of John Lee Hooker, 1963 to 1974 or something.
Jeez, good choice.
It was, and then a House of Blues Records compilation that was actually a really good introduction to a lot of stuff, because that particular, really good compile that gave a really good kind of cross section of just how wide-ranging blues is as a genre, because there was everything on it from Delta blues to jump stuff to heavy Chicago blues, all stuff, stuff like that. And then it was Taj Mahal Giant Steps, which I did not understand and value enough at the time, was a really great representation of what Taj is as a cross-genre Americana
right, as
artist.
a fusionist of Americana, yeah.
Because,
so is this version closer to his?
Yeah.
Than
It
Dave's?
is.
But you could have, because you've got the range for it, you could have went down low like Dave Dudley singing it, but you didn't do it that way. Yeah.
No, I mean, again, my touchstones for that song, and I love the Dave Dudley version now, but my touchstones for that song are the Taj Mahal version and the Mudcrutch version, which was the proto.
I've never heard either.
Unreleased.
I got to check it out.
Yeah,
petty band that's come around in the last 10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah,
that they put
it was
out that CD.
It was
finally.
the band that Tom Petty and Benmont Tench and Mike Campbell were in before the Heartbreak.
I didn't know they did 6 days on the road.
And they got back together and recorded a record back in 2009, and that was one of the tunes on it.
Okay.
And that kind of reintroduced me to the song.
Really good record.
A great killer record. And so I mean, another one of the tunes that I'd always really loved and was one of the first songs we learned with the Damnations. And so, when we decided to make that live record, the live EP, it's a live EP is always a good excuse to record some of your favorite cover tunes.
Sure.
And we were saving some of the newest original stuff for this full length that we're working on right now. And so, we picked what we felt like were some of our best cover songs. And 6 days and Stop, and the version of Ramblin' Man that we do is kind of more of a Latin beat, which is also something we do.
Well, there's a Bo Diddley song on there too.
I can tell.
Yeah, that came off real well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's a big crowd favorite.
I learned that one from Lee McBee, actually.
Yeah, that's a great song. God, so I want to impress you with my trucker knowledge here. So I know what a George Overdrive is. I got to get this in here. So
please do.
Because you guys are traveling all the time, you'll get a kick out of this. The low overpasses. You know what truckers call those? Barbershops.
Let some air out of your tires because the barbershop's coming up.
When you're driving down the interstate and you see those recaps that come off the truck tires all the time, they call those gators or crocodiles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and what the hell? Okay, so and you're down this part of the country sometimes. You know what an Arkansas credit card is?
No.
6 foot of garden hose.
We'll get a tank and get out of town.
Funny enough, that was incorporated into an episode of The Simpsons, I remember.
Really?
Well, yeah, they went on a field trip, and the school was so broke that Principal Skinner had to give Otto, the bus driver, the hose to go steal.
Give him the siphon hose.
And he said, Otto, here's the credit card.
Here's the credit card.
Oh, my God. Did you see the episode where Otto tried to teach Bart how to play the guitar?
No.
And Bart couldn't master the guitar. Well, like everybody picked it up, and it's so hard to play, So he just set it down. So Homer gives him words of wisdom, Homer, he said, son, if something's really hard and at first you don't succeed at it, just give up.
Oh. Now, for all you young guitar players out there, half hour a day.
Yeah, right.
Half hour a day, no matter how much it hurts.
Muddy Waters said when he was first learning, he did 2 hours a day.
See, well, that's why he became Muddy Waters.
Yeah,
that's right. Hey.
The mud.
You can always do 8 hours on weekends.
Oh, God. Well, we are about out of time, particularly with the little music snippets that we're playing. So anything I didn't ask about that you'd like to tell people about Haymakers or Damnations or Dustin Arbuckle?
Well, I mean, I think the best at this point, social media and everything is the best way to kind of stay up with a band online. Yes. So if you would like to keep in touch with Haymakers online, you can find us under both Facebook or Instagram under the moniker of Haymakers ICT, which is the airport code for Wichita.
Yes. Another one of our deliberate decisions, which, we're living with it.
Well, there's some other bands that use some variation on Haymakers out there, so we had to delineate ourselves. But also our website is haymakersict.com.
But you guys ought to own it.
That are not so social but want to get the info.
Because Haymakers, it can be a punch to the head, or out in our part of the country, it's making hay.
Exactly. And making hay is multi-layered also in things I shouldn't say on microphones.
Right, yeah. So, we're very much a wheat producing area and, hay producing area around Kansas. And then, so that we wanted it something to be kind of Midwestern and vaguely rural.
Yeah. It fits. It's great.
And then if you want to check out the Damnations, you can go to DustinArbuckleDamnations.com. It's on Instagram. It's at Dustin Arbuckle Damnations, and the URL on Facebook is facebook.com/DustinArbuckleMusic. So check all those things out and follow both bands. And both bands tour a lot these days, so hopefully we'll be coming to your town.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll put some links on the podcast page, and people can check you out on Amazon there if they want to pick up that new Damnations EP or Haymakers CD that's out. And do it that way. Again, thanks for being the guest, Dustin Arbuckle, Tom Page, and that's another podcast. George. So it's time to wrap it up, get on out of here, but I've really enjoyed the time today with a couple of great musicians from the Heartland, Dustin and Tom. I hope you like listening to this stuff as much as I do putting it together and producing it, because it's just a lot of fun with some great music. And please continue to check us out on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. You can see us on YouTube. And, of course, we're also on iTunes and all the various online platforms with a podcast by George.